and I realize that I am a misogynist and I have to come out about something. I'm an incel.
Welcome back. You're here with Goldberg. Now, you might be wondering, why have I graced your eyes with this marvelous soy specimen? There is a method to the madness, I promise you. Because it's a cautionary tale. Many of you young men, you get very enthralled by the red pill and the manosphere, and you don't just want to live a particular lifestyle, but you actually want to do content. You want to show the world how red pill you are and how much you know about female nature. But you lack a sense of perspective and you're not looking towards the future, so you can easily fritter away your 20s on this kind of chaotic cause. You can go full retard on the internet, but not break above that hedge to where it becomes self-sufficient and you're like a PewDiePie or someone else. I'm not trying to compare PewDiePie to Manospherians, because that'd be kind of disrespectful. Or you can just crash and burn. And then some years later, you've amounted to nothing. You haven't built status or resources, so you are left to pursue the very same lifestyle that you were condemning and indicting men for just a few years into the past. It might surprise you that I tried to help this dude. Back in, I think it was 2018, he went on this campaign attacking various people on the internet, in the manosphere, myself included, in most cases entirely unprovoked. But I was like, you have to have some sense of sympathy, I suppose, because men have anger and emotions they don't understand. They tend to lash out. So I told him, look, man, you're clearly in over your own head. You don't realize how bad you look. So just get off the internet for a bit, work a normal construction job, join the Marines, do something that's going to actually require you to develop a thicker skin. And you're going to learn what it means to be a man under difficult conditions, as opposed to I'm just trying to flex on the internet. But obviously he ignored me, and he followed the very same trajectory that I had predicted almost line by line some years before. That's what we have to talk about, because it might help you avoid the same mistakes. Now, this dude always reminded me of people I've known in my own life who came from divorced families. And typically what will happen is that the single mom inculcates in the mind of her son this idea that he's so special, he's better than everyone else, he's perfect. It's a way of shielding against the harsh reality, admittedly, that the parents are not together. But the result is a mediocre half-wit with this complex about how the world is there to roll out a red carpet just because they exist, regardless of what they've accomplished. Even if they're just not a good person, you're supposed to be there like, oh, wow, basking in your glory. It's nonsensical, but it is the truth. They also become narcissistic and typically pathological liars as well, which in both cases, it applies to our little friend here. Emphasis on little, of course. In terms of his very masculine path through life, we have the following. He goes to a decent state school intending to become a personal trainer, but he can't lift heavy weights. The protein fart lifestyle is no good for him, so he elects for the brain fart lifestyle. I am high IQ. I will go to medical school. I'm not like you low IQ MGTOWs. But he doesn't go to a real medical school. It's one of those alt health, water wizardry, put Tabasco red pills up your ass to cure disease institutions. And that's fine. That's legitimate if that's what you want to do. Not trying to hate on you. But he had these conflicting narratives for why he didn't finish and become a naturopath doctor. So here it's like, feminism left me with hundreds of thousands of dollars in student debt with nothing to show for it. No, feminism didn't cause you to apply and get into debt. That was your decision. A masculine man would know that. But obviously here, that's debatable. I was suspended when the library where I performed my research for a master's degree was also shut down. That was the other thing. Oh, I was too intelligent. I was trying to teach the professor. That's why they kicked me out. Or I was too masculine. They couldn't handle me. Oh, I'm a Trump supporter. That's why they didn't want me. But he said, I decided to take a leave of absence. And then other places he was kicked out because of feminism, right? Now, in this other instance, he's actually admitting that he dropped out of medical school. So it's like, dude, when you're paying an institution all this money, they're not going to kick you out because you support Trump. I'm sure there's conservatives who complete this program without a problem. They're going to kick you out because you either harassed someone, you created a hostile work environment with your research partners, you cheated, or you were lazy and you flunked. That's the reason. It's on you. It's not feminism. It's not, oh, I'm too masculine, which you aren't. it's your own actions and decisions. But a narcissistic person, a pathological liar, will always try to come up with a rationalization for their failures instead of taking responsibility. And unfortunately, that's the way things play out. So from there on, he tries to become like an independent health guru online, which probably would have been a good career if he'd stuck to it. But again, you get a sense of, poor work ethic, laziness, not able to stick with something for a long enough period of time. And that's why, of course, these are going to be the results. Having failed at actually attaining some kind of qualification, he looks for another opportunity to show that he actually is meaningful as a person and living up to his own ego. And he says he wants to be a PUA, which, he struggled with, obviously. I don't know what his line of approach was. Maybe, I know how to make the Stacy's wet as I zone out. You incels can't even handle me right now. I don't know if he actually got many women. He claimed that he had gotten either chlamydia or AIDS, and that made him alpha, like AIDS is alpha or something of that nature. I don't know the full story. Well, the problem he has, of course, is that he's not a very tall guy. He's about 5'4", which isn't exactly helping. But I always felt he could have maybe written a memoir about PUA experiences and been successful, like NYT bestseller. Just title it, There and Cucked Again, A Manlet's Tale by Yogi Zero Amps. Just a suggestion, Lacking success as a PUA, he turns to, I'm a MGTOW, and also because some girl apparently broke his heart, big surprise there. MGTOW is immediately simp for him, he gets a lot of following, and back in 2018, you could actually talk about MGTOW on YouTube, and you could make money from ads and get a lot of views. The algorithm was more friendly to normal people. But he also rapidly realizes you can't get as many female followers if you talk about walking away from women. So all of a sudden he decides to torch MGTOWs, say he's not a MGTOW, they're losers, all this stuff. And what was funny though, he claimed he was MGTOW because he believed in it, not because of money. But I remember when there was a tiff between him and Undead Chronic, which you can still find those videos on BitChute, I believe. While this was all going on, he's saying, I'm not profiting off of MGTOW. He makes another comment on Hammerhand's channel and says, I only stopped talking about MGTOW because the videos were getting demonetized. It's like, oh, so you were trying to make money off of MGTOW. Just admit it. It's like Chronic himself switched from MGTOW response to Red Pill response after the Adpocalypse. I just don't get people who have to lie about it like our friend here. You don't have to be a pathological liar. Just admit it and move on. In any case, this quote is a good summation of the personality. I'm an angry male. I love that about myself. Anyone who doesn't like male anger can burn in hell. Below is a quote from a Christian website. Yeah, that's a great understanding of Christianity, my friend. So let us proceed. What does he do next? Oh, his testicles started shrinking and he's wearing a cross. That's kind of sad. What can you do, man? Poor face, dude. Just, you kind of feel bad for them. This was interesting. So he was renowned for, even though he was supposedly a Trump supporter and, fighting the left, he was also renowned for accusing people of racism if they called him Indian, which he is. I mean, Indian subcontinent, roughly. I think maybe Bangladesh or Bengali, something like that. He said, oh, you guys are racist, diversity is our strength, all this nonsense. And then when he switched, he left MGTOW and he was into more of this trad, red pill, right-wing stuff. Now he's saying F diversity. Now, if you are the byproduct, as most people from South Asia are, you're the byproduct of post-1965 immigration legislation, you have no business whining about globalism and diversity in the Western world because you literally are that. I was reading a book by this clown who's being promoted on Breitbart. I'll probably talk about it. And he's like going against globalism and such. And he's literally, the product of the migration system, came over in the 80s or something. I was like, these people they'd have no sense of perspective whatsoever. But it gets worse. Then he says he's not a person of color, that in fact, I am fairly Aryan. I don't agree that is important. That he says he tans easily or some nonsense like that. And these other Indian dudes were calling him out, you're a clown. So he started crying because and I also predicted this, and I'm not trying to say I'm always right, but I'm pretty much always right. I said this guy is a self-hating dude. He hates his ethnic background or his race or whatnot because The reason he didn't want to be called Indian is not because that was inaccurate. It was because he didn't want to be associated with other Indian people. He had this kind of, oh yeah, I'm basically going to be part of white culture. I'm American, right? What is American a race? um, and the sad part is that, they go through all this stuff like, I'm going to be a 50s disciplinarian, Don Draper type guy, all this trying to appeal to that, aesthetic. You're not part of that, dude. You're never going to be part of that. You should be proud of who you are and where you come from, as opposed to trying to LARP. Because what happens with these guys, and I've talked about it before, they'll LARP and they'll be so self-hating. They're like, okay, I better marry into white culture or something like that. But as genetics work, what if your son looks like, as MGTOW Dictionary would say, deep curry, right? What if they have more of the Indian side? Are you going to resent them? Because this happens with a lot of these people of different origins. It's just like a black guy who fixates on BLM and then refuses to have anything to do with black women. Or a white dude who's obsessed with demographics and then marries a Filipina. This stuff is like, you have conflicts, so you probably shouldn't reproduce, because then you're going to inflict your own neuroticism on kids, which is a horrible thing to do. With MGTOW cast aside, and he gets into this like somewhat red-pilled, radical traditionalism, control women nonsense. In a long-term relationship, a man should periodically check his woman's phone. I'd say a once-a-week stop and frisk procedure. Like, this is the type of paranoia that guys who don't know how to forge like a halfway competent relationship with a woman engage in. It just becomes this weird shit, and it can lead to violence, not necessarily, but it's just cringy, honestly. If you have to do this, you're better off just not even bothering with dating. If you're that paranoid, why would you want to live your life and be that paranoid? I don't even know if this is actually maybe this is just a joke. I've been to a few gay bars. Once I had diarrhea in the gender-neutral restroom. Some girls walked in and they said, "Ooh, it smells like a guy was in here." After I came out, I told them it was the spicy chicken wings. They scurried away, more embarrassed that I heard them than I was from my smelly poo. Clearly, gender-neutral restrooms are a bad idea. You can't make this stuff up. This is a very good example, too. I prefer my woman to be dependent on me, not independent. Now, when he was talking about becoming a Christian, and this is very interesting, he says that he had been kicked out of medical school and he was living with his mommy. He didn't have a job. And he went out on a date and this girl was aggressive and it threatened his masculinity. But living with mommy didn't threaten his masculinity, right? But you want women to be dependent on you. Okay, so it's always the same thing with these masculinity trad gurus. Many of them, they can't even live up to the traditional man who takes care of the woman. They have no sense of what that means, but they want to say, oh yeah, you should just follow me because I'm a man and I just deserve this by default. It's ridiculous. A lot of weird stuff about rape and whether consent exists. I'm not going to bother with that. But it was funny, all this fixation on virginity. He's all like, oh, you must be like me, women, and protect your virginity. And whenever guys fixate on virginity in this like weird way, they're the guys who can't actually get a virgin girl because they're so screwed up in the head. In fact, unfortunately, I don't have the screen cap, but I remember a tweet someone had sent me, and he was asking his audience, is it okay to marry someone who has multiple notch counts? Because that's probably the girl he ended up marrying, is the one that is not a virgin. Even though he said all this stuff about, you need to have a virgin, all this crap. Because it's a bunch of, like, desire to control someone. Because at the end of the day, you have really nothing to offer. So you have to settle because what exactly are you providing? Nothing. You don't have a career. You don't have resources. You don't really have status. You destroyed your reputation. You don't have any sensible status. And it's like, okay, but I need to control you still, right? It's just a bunch of nonsense, honestly, as I probably said a few times before already. And here we go again. How to beat your wife according to Islam. Oh, this is so funny. It's sort of ironic. This is the type of stuff you do because you just want attention. And I really do fault YouTube because prior to the adpocalypse, regular people could have channels. You didn't have to rely on all this clickbait. All this stupid drama and clickbait really went into overdrive once, even if you were making decent content, you wouldn't get any views because the algorithm deems you to be unacceptable in some regard. So that's a great shame. And people do this. And even if you are a traditionalist, even if you are a conservative, this type of content, it's just distasteful. It's all about provocation. There's no meaning behind it, right? It's all that whole, oh, let me just get some attention. It's just a meme. It's irony, brah. Kind of unfortunate, if you ask me. What I suspect happened is that he finally got in contact with this person. I guess it's a Swedish individual. And like, well, she likely saw his videos and realized, okay, this dude is super insecure about his own masculinity. He's a short dude. He struggles with women. So any girl who gives him the time of day, even if she's like a 3 out of 10, he's going to be, oh yeah, I'm all yours. He's also very insecure about his race, so you can play that to your advantage as well because he's obsessed with his status of being less like his own background. And that's what it was. I believe this woman was probably a simp hunter. She said, okay, I can find a dude, I can exploit his weaknesses, and I can turn him into a doormat husband who does what I want. You might say, oh, that's not fair, you can't say that. But just think about it for a second, right? But around the time Roosh was making his transition from PUA to Christian, our friend Zero Abs did something similar. Not because he wanted to embrace the Christian way of life, humility, seeking forgiveness for all the men and women he had defamed, attacked, and insulted on the internet, but it was more self-aggrandizement. I have spoken with God, you must listen to me. Oh yeah, more of the how incredible I am, and this is the reason that I can instruct you, or you should send me money, which is probably the better interpretation. But then a few months ago, his content starts disappearing from the internet like it's being scrubbed. Unfortunately, you can't really do that. He put it under his name. He always had a kind of spurgy approach, like you'd expect from TFM, but at least TFM has the self-awareness to realize that he's weird, so he doesn't make it himself on the internet. But our friend Yogi put his own name, Avishek Saha, because when you have that big of an ego, you want people to see your face and your name and all that. Now he's trying to distance from it. Like, oh, I wasn't involved in that. Oh, no, I'm just trying to live a normie lifestyle. This is what happens. And I've talked about it before, the male loser trajectory. I had a video on that in the past, where guys who have amounted to nothing, they've built no status, they haven't spent their 20s wisely, they haven't built a business or a career or anything, they have no vision about life. They will try to cope by whether it's getting laid or getting the girlfriend, getting married. It's like this, ladder of a decline, if you will. I'll have a kid. If I have a kid, that means I can show that I've achieved something as a man, when in reality, you're just going to take all your weird aspects as a person and you're going to make a child deal with that, which we can already see from earlier talking about how it could be a problem if you're self-hating. But what is this marvelous human being who can teach us about the world? What is he doing now? After all this, I'm so great, you must worship me, oh, I have all this knowledge. What is he actually doing? What has he amounted to now that he's in his 30s and he's a lot closer to the magical number of 40? Let's take a little look. Well, he's trying to pass himself off as a freelance medical and science writer. This is the dude who said that women don't have to use birth control. They probably won't get pregnant. Childbirth isn't that painful for a lot of women. All this great knowledge. I suppose this is the wedding picture. Reminds you of that Tim McGraw song, Bet your hair's sleek back and your shirt's well tucked. And I bet you got no idea you're about to get cucked. If I were to guess, and I don't know for certain, this chick probably got pounded out by a couple of Bjorns, maybe some imported Chadams and Somalian Tyrones in Sweden, and then said, okay, I'll settle for Lil Yogi because he will take care of me. And look at what this dude is doing. Look at what he's doing, not just the medical writer stuff. Look at this. I assume this is over the phone because of COVID. Cold calling people to sell insurance. That's what you've amounted to. All this, I'm such a great man, you need to worship the ground I stand on. You're cold calling people to hawk life insurance because you've amounted to nothing and now you have to be a beta provider to your wife. See, folks, this is a lesson, and we can wish him well, whatever, but If you're a young man, be careful with the manosphere. Be careful with this idea, yeah, I'm invincible because I'm in my 20s. I can just spend all my time chasing women or being red pill online. You're going to wake up, and if you've not amounted to anything, it's going to be much harder in your 30s and your 40s to catch up. This dude is pretty much the living embodiment of a beta cuck mangina, who he probably made fun of those guys as a red pill creator, and now he's essentially become what he supposedly hated. It's just a lesson, all right? You can think that you're alpha, you can think that you're masculine, and you can, at the end of the day, just be a frustrated incel who has to compromise and has to settle in order to have access to a woman for the long run.